Since the mid-1800s, artists and groups have used all kinds of tactics to get their message across. One of the ones being spoken about today is performance art. Performance art is a live, public form of expression that mixes theater, visual art, movement, and ideas. It humanizes abstract issues, forces attention, and creates powerful visuals that travel across media. Along with communicating different emotions towards its audience, it often builds a community among its participants. One social group that really benefited from using performance arts was the San Francisco Mime Troupe. They were one of the first groups to engage in radical political activism and often used satire and humor to call out political power. They performed in public spaces so working class audiences could watch. Their characters were exaggerated versions of corrupt politicians, greedy landlords, and other systems they disagreed with. The comedy made people relax and listen, which opened them up to political messages. Performing in public took art out of elite spaces and turned everyday streets and parks into political stages, making activism visible and inviting others to join in. Overall, the San Francisco Mime Troupe used performance arts as a way to educate people, disrupt the status quo, and empower communities. Through satire, public shows, and collective creativity, they turned theater into a form of direct action.
Since the start of the transatlantic slave trade, music has always been at the foundation of fighting against oppression and white supremacy. When the first slave ships left the coast of Africa, slaves on board would use music as a way to communicate to each other on how to take over ships in an attempt towards freedom. And once those ships landed in America, music was still the main tool used in order to communicate these messages of freedom. After the Civil War, freedom songs continued to shape resistance efforts. Even after emancipation, the word freedom was still a very dangerous thing to be caught saying for millions of black people. Freedom singers, composers, and poets were very important during this time, as a lot of black people did not have the ability to read, so music and other forms of performance art were the only ways they were able to gain certain messages. A notable group that used singing to help in the fight towards freedom were the Freedom Singers. The Freedom Singers started out as a quartet and they were formed in 1962 at Albany State College in Albany, Georgia. The Freedom Singers became a touring group to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and they used their performances to fundraise and support their committee and the civil rights movement. The Freedom Singers used songs like We Shall Not Be Moved to educate and boost morale for millions of black people enduring civil rights violations at the time. The Freedom Singers were dedicated to educating the black community about their basic freedoms, like the right to vote and not cooperating with Jim Crow laws. This is why, in fact, many songs like We Shall Not Be Moved are considered to be the face of the civil rights movement. The Freedom Singers went on tours to communities that wouldn't be able to hear the messages, especially if they didn't have access to radio. These tours were the main way the civil rights movement was able to bring black Americans together towards the work for racial equality.
The President of the United States of America has taken over the Kennedy Center and would like to control the type of programming that takes place there. The movements that are being done outside of the Kennedy Center are simple enough that anyone can do them. Supporters of all ages are participating in a protest against those that want to control the arts. Hands Off the Arts is the organization that is leading the charge. While President Trump has stated he no longer wants to see any form of woke programming being displayed at the center, as he was named the chairman of the Kennedy Center Board in February 2025, many of the scheduled performers have canceled their performances at the Kennedy Center. Performers such as Hamilton, composer Philip Glass, Renee Fleming, the Martha Graham Dance Company, Seattle Children's Theater, as well as many others, are deciding to no longer perform at the Kennedy Center. If they won't allow woke arts to take place inside of the center, then they have decided to perform activism in front of the center.
That message, expressed through movement rather than words, is at the center of today's dance protest outside the Kennedy Center.
When I think about the effectiveness of performance art as a revolutionary tactic, the first thing I think about is Ron Athey's 4 Scenes in a Harsh Life. While there is many other AIDS era performance art that might have been a lot more accepted, and made a lot more positive movement, I think that 4 Scenes in a Harsh Life really exemplifies the good and bad in terms of performance art as a revolutionary tactic. I will not describe a lot of what goes on as it's very graphic, but I will say that there is a scarification ritual that happens, and due to misinterpretation, people assumed that Ron Athey, the artist, was the one who is being scarred, and he is HIV positive, and so people got really up in arms, but that was never the case. And so I feel like this really demonstrates how provocative of performance art can be extremely effective, but in that way it can draw just as much negative ire as it can positive attention. And overall, I think performance art can be an extremely effective tactic, but I think, as is seen with ACT UP and Ron Athey's 4 Scenes in a Harsh Life, it is really dependent on the public's reaction, and if the public gets angry, you are instantly unable to maintain credibility.